So, good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. We have a Q&A session now. The Buddha said the Dhamma is timeless, so it just shows you if you're watching from another part of the world and it's evening or middle of night and here it's middle of the day, then it just shows you the Dhamma is timeless. The Dhamma is useful for us at any time of day or night, anywhere in the world. So we're just proving that with this retreat because there are people joining from different places. So I hope your first morning has gone well in your retreat. We have some questions have already come in. So number one from Ling Fung in Singapore. Dear Ajahn, is there such a thing as a healthy lie? When our intention is good, to either avoid hurting a person or saving him or her from making another mistake. Healthy lie. Is there such a thing as a healthy lie or a sickly lie? You have to remember, if you tell a lie intentionally, you say something that's not true, you may be hurting yourself, and you're a person as well. So we always say that, don't we? We say, oh, tell a white lie to save somebody's hurt feelings, solve some problem, but maybe you're hurting yourself in that situation, and you count as well. So, the Buddha didn't really talk about white lies. That's a more modern concept, and probably come about because, in the workplace and social things, white lies are quite normal. And, the danger is you can't be quite sure what your intention is, because as soon as you say something that's not true, you're on shaky ground. And you may say, well, I'm doing it to save someone from hurt feelings or to protect somebody. But can you be sure of that? Because you're saying something that's not true, maybe some other intentions slip into that conversation. Maybe you're doing it just to hide something for your own advantage or someone else's advantage. So maybe there's some greed in there. Maybe there's some malice in there. It could slip in because once you're not telling the truth, you're kind of on shaky ground. And I think the Buddha encouraged us to see that one thing can lead to another. So you say one lie, it may be what you might call a white lie, a very small little lie, only to protect someone, but then it can snowball. The unwholesome, unskillful intentions in our speech can snowball and get worse. We can can become a habit, and a small white lie can become a big white lie, then can become a grey lie, and then can become a very dark, malicious lie. It's like a slippery slope. So many of the precepts are like this. You're trying to become more aware of your intention, and you're trying to purify your mind from unwholesome karma, from unwholesome intentions. So I personally don't usually have a problem with this. You can stay quiet sometimes, when you're not required to speak, or you don't wish to speak on something, you can just stay quiet. Or you can speak about something else rather than tell a lie. Maybe there's another way to speak around this problem, whatever is prompting you to tell a white lie. Maybe there's another way to do it, to solve this problem without telling a lie. So generally we don't encourage white lies because it's hard to know whether it's a white, grey, dark colour or whatever colour lie, and also it can be a cause for your own doubt, regret over what you said, or other people may feel hurt when they find out you've been telling lies, then they don't respect you so much or don't trust you so much. So it's kind of shaky ground. So I would encourage you not to do that if you can. I'm just speaking generally here, of course. Sometimes people have their own situation which seems to require a white lie to be told. So if that comes up, well, we'll discuss it when it comes up. But generally speaking, I wouldn't go that way. I would try and speak the truth or just stay quiet, maybe. Another question also from the same person. Dear Ajahn, as a baby Dhamma practitioner, I'm curious why some people are able to see ghosts and some not. How can one help liberate a lost soul from a realm of suffering? Oh, every day we are helping to liberate lost souls, a lost soul from suffering. This soul, ourself. We're a lost soul, so work on yourself is number one priority in the practice. If ghosts want to join the retreat and practice the precepts and meditation, good, they're welcome to, but we can't see them. Well, most people can't see them, so you can't be sure. And the trouble is, things you can't see, your imagination takes over. So if there are ghosts around, may they practice the Dhamma and also be liberated. But where we can be sure is ourselves. We know what we're thinking, what we're doing, and we can develop mindful awareness and wisdom around that. So I'd say that's a good starting point. However, having said that, well, yes, some people can see ghosts, they say. Generally it's people who practice meditation and made merit over many, many lifetimes. So their mind tends to be, maybe they enter samadhi easily, or they have that kind of special knowledge that arises when they do meditate. Not everyone, but some people have this. But still, you have to ask, what's the benefit of it? Like if you're trying to develop the Eightfold Noble Path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, develop the wisdom to purify your own mind from greed, anger and delusion. If you're meditating and you have some intuition or vision of a being in other realms, such as a ghost, what use is it? It may help confirm that other realms of existence do exist, they're there. May help you confirm to you, the teaching of karma, that beings die and they are reborn in different realms according to their karma, good and bad. But maybe it doesn't bring you a lot of real insight into your own mind and practice. And there is a danger that, the mind is always looking for something else to become fascinated with, interested in. So in the history of Buddhism, there's been quite a few practitioners who have maybe seen ghosts in their meditation, a vision of a being, and then they become caught up in thinking, well, should I help this being? Should I share merits with them? What is the problem with this being? Where do they live? Some people become afraid, some people become kind of caught up in compassionate thoughts to help, and they get lost from their practice. I remember one lady lived with Ajahn Mahabua, and her meditation was quite strong, her samadhi became quite strong, and she kept seeing visions of ghosts and spreading thoughts of kindness and sharing merits with them. And then she said more would come and more would come and more would come, and she spent all the time thinking about these ghosts and sharing merit with them. So then she got told off by the teacher that she's not doing her vipassana anymore, she's just thinking about all these ghosts which seem to be endless. So there are these problems with beings that you can't normally see. One is your imagination can take over, and you might convince yourself you've seen a ghost when it's just your imagination. Or you may genuinely have some vision of some being, but then you spend all your time thinking about them, sharing merits with them, and forgetting your own practice. So those are the dangers. Really, beings, whether in this realm, human realm, or animal realm, or ghost realm, we develop a general thought of compassion, kindness for all beings in all realms, and it's good enough. Occasionally people have a strong intuition of somebody close to them who's died, and maybe it's quite common when people come to the monastery, the day before or a few days before they come to the monastery, they have a dream or even occasionally a vision of a parent, mother or father or grandparent coming to see them, and it seems to be like a prompt. They're about to go to the monastery to make offerings. It's like a prompt for them to do that. It's like confirmation that what they're doing is a good thing, or occasionally the ghost they see seems to be in a state of distress, so it's like, oh, this is somebody I should make merit for. And it's just before they come to the monastery, so they come, they make their merit, and they share the merit with that person who they've seen in a dream. So it can be based on our karmic connections to family or relatives. But then many people don't have these dreams, don't see beings like this, and that's fine. And we can still make merit for all beings. Some people may be skeptical. Oh, I don't think ghosts exist. Well, that's fine, because if you're practicing what the Buddha taught, the number one priority is for happiness, well-being, and progress in this very life. And if you don't believe in rebirth or beings in other realms, that's fine. You're still benefiting in this very life from the good actions and the practice you do. But if there is any way you can help beings in other realms by sharing the merit, well, that's fine. You can do that. But beware of these dangers, the mind that gets so fascinated by these things that you forget to do your own practice, and you're just always thinking about ghosts, and it's your imagination can be so vivid that people start to attribute every little thing that happens to a ghost or the presence of a ghost. So you're walking along and a branch of a tree drops down near you and you must think, oh, it's a ghost, when maybe it was just wind, or the branch of that tree was dead, so it just fell. Oh yeah, so every little thing can be attributed to a ghost. Every bit of bad luck, oh, it must be ghosts. After a while, you're losing your ability to discern and understand properly what's going on in your life, because you're just attributing everything to the presence of a ghost, which you can't see, and you're just guessing or creating this ghost to fill in a vacuum in your mind where you don't have clear knowledge, so you say, oh, it must be a ghost, when often it's not. And you're just creating that ghost out of your own imagination. So be careful of that side of things. That's not to say they don't exist. And many teachers have told stories of meeting ghosts. Monks with good meditation, clear meditation, who they can trust their own discernment. Sometimes they've talked about the presence of beings, and usually ghosts refers to what we call pretas, hungry ghosts, people who have died in a state of unhappiness. They've been affected by strong greed and attachment, strong anger, strong delusion in one way or another. So when they've died, their mind, their citta has not been peaceful, and they're reborn in a realm, an unhappy realm. So sometimes teachers, monks, nuns with strong minds can share merit or help those beings, or see those beings, help them in one way or another. So it's worth thinking about, isn't it? Why does somebody, if ghosts do exist, why does somebody get reborn as a ghost? Well, usually it's because their mind is not wholesome when they die. They've made some unwholesome karma through greed, anger, and delusion. And you would want to clear up your greed, anger, and delusion in this very life, so you don't get reborn as a ghost. It's kind of logical, isn't it? You keep practicing this life, and if you haven't reached Nibbana by the end of your life, then at least you'll be reborn in a good place with a good state of mind, because you've created that karma. Ajahn Chah used to talk about the preta, the hungry ghost, which came from the man who lived in the monastery, an old man lived in the monastery and became very possessive and attached to the monastery. It's his place. And often ghosts, they say, are people born from, they've had very strong attachment to a place or a role in their human life, and then they haven't let go of that. So when they die, that attachment brings them back. So this man was very attached to the monastery, always. He's a bit of a control freak. He's always walking around the monastery cleaning up everything, which is normally a good thing, good karma to help clean up a monastery, look after the grounds, keep the kitchen clean and so on. But this man became over-attached, so he became obsessive with keeping everything in its place. You might use a modern term, say he became a bit of a control freak. And then before he died, he made merit by building a little wayfarers' rest house by the side of the road out in the on the highway for travellers who were travelling from town to town. In the old days in Thailand, they would sometimes stop at these rest houses where they could sleep for the night with a roof over their head, and it's just open for the public. So that's a good thing to do. He sponsored the building of that. But then he died, and there was probably a little plaque or something put up. This rest house was built, sponsored by this man. And then people over the years, they would stay there on their travels. As they came from one town, they'd stop there for the night before they moved on to another town. And they all complained that they couldn't sleep properly when they were staying in this rest house. And they complained that sometimes, there'd be a group of people coming, and there would maybe be 5 or 10 people, and they would sleep on mats, very simple mats on the floor. They'd put their mats down and they'd sleep in a line. But of course, if you have a group of 5 or 10 people, everyone is of a different size. Some are shorter, some are taller, some are round, some are skinny. And they'd all lie down to sleep. And then during the night, they would feel like somebody was pushing and pulling them. And they say this old man had become a hungry ghost because he's so attached to this little rest house in his mind. That was what he was really attached to. So he was there as a ghost floating around, I guess. And he was so obsessed with everything looking neat and tidy that when he saw a group of 10 people sleeping in a row, he didn't like it if they were all kind of, ones who were shorter, their feet were on one level, and the ones who were longer, their feet were dangling this way and their arms that way. He would be going around tidying them up all night. So if he saw a short person, he'd pull their legs down so that they would meet the legs of the long persons. They all looked like neat in a row. Or the long person, the tall person, he'd push them so that their feet went up again to meet the feet of the short person. He was trying to get everybody's feet in a row so it looked nice and neat and tidy. So this ghost would spend all night pulling and pushing on people's feet, and then he'd go around the back, and then their heads are all out, because if you get all the feet together, well, then the heads are going to be out. So he'd be pushing heads in and pulling heads out, so no one would get any sleep. So sometimes Ajahn Chah would tell this story about if you live in a place, a family, in a home or in a monastery or any other place where there's people, some people become too obsessed with making everything just right, controlling everything, trying to tidy up everything, make the short people taller and the tall people shorter, and they create a lot of suffering for themselves and others. So if you don't want to be a hungry ghost, don't do that. You have to practice compassion, letting go, accept the way things are, and learn to let go, and learn to do this before you die. So you're not born in a state of suffering after you're dead. This world is the way it is, isn't it? You can't make everyone the same or everything the same. Life isn't always fair because things go according to karma, causes and conditions. So don't try and always control everything and make everything exactly the same. It doesn't always work out, and in the process you become very stressed as well. So don't do that. So another question from Felicia in Malaysia. Dear Ajahn, I have 3 questions here. 1, is it correct that we can only dedicate our merits to the deceased but not the living? When we say dedicate to all beings, doesn't that include all our past relatives and friends and all the beings in the ghost realm, as well as our living friends? Well, the more you practice, particularly making merit through dana, sila, bhavana, and developing your mind and your heart through meditation, these distinctions of language become less important. If you develop mindfulness every day, you're putting effort into that, and you're developing more kindness and compassion every day, and you're doing your best in your practice, you become more sensitive to your own heart, and then you become more sensitive to the suffering of others. And you naturally start to open up to wishing others well, and all beings, all the people you meet, animals, anything. you tend to become more aware of suffering and want people to be free from their suffering. So that intention becomes clearer and stronger for you. And there's no distinction. If there are such things as ghosts, many people believe in them, many people don't. But if there are, you would wish them to be happy. Just as living people, you wish them to be happy. And that intention, rooted in goodwill, compassion, will become stronger and part of who you are, part of your practice, the more you practice. Strictly speaking, if somebody's passed away, we say we share or dedicate merit to them. And we don't know where they are, whether they've been reborn as a human, in which case they don't need merit because they've already achieved a good rebirth. If they've been reborn as a deva in a heaven realm, well, we dedicate merit to them. They rejoice in that. They rejoice in the goodness of our action, but they don't really need the merit because, again, they've already achieved a good rebirth. Those beings who the Buddha said can receive our merit, and it may help them to lift out of their own suffering and improve their state of mind, that's the hungry ghosts. So we do dedicate merit to our friends, relatives, all beings, in case they may be in a realm of suffering, and our dedication of merit may help them out of that to rejoice. For the living, we tend to call it spreading metta, because they're still alive, and it's spreading our thoughts of goodwill, dedicating our acts of goodness to somebody who's sick or suffering. They're still alive, but we're dedicating our thoughts to them. But you can see it's very similar. Sharing merit, spreading metta, that's coming from the same root of goodwill and compassion, karuna, wishing beings to be free from suffering. But we're acknowledging also that we have connections through karma, not just this life, but past lives with many beings. And so, especially at this time, Chengmeng, in the Asian tradition, it's at a time where we make merit for our ancestors. And it's an acknowledgement that there are many generations of people in our family going back far further, much further than we can remember, but they've still had an influence on us. Maybe they've built up our family assets and family name, and we've received direct or indirect benefit from many, many people. And we've had relationships with many people who maybe we can't remember or don't know about anymore. So with the dead, we generally wish all beings in all realms to receive the merits of our good actions. We don't know whether they need them or not, whether it will help them or not. It doesn't matter. We just do it as a matter of course. And so if there is some being related to us who's close by in a different realm, but they're waiting for merit, well, we wish them well, and we're happy to share and dedicate the merit to them, even though we might not remember their name, don't remember who they are anymore. We can do that. And they say even that you share or dedicate merit to all beings, and maybe your relatives on that day, they've all come, they've received their merit, and then there's still a bit of merit left. Because merit is kind of limitless in a way, especially the more you do, the more powerful it becomes. So maybe there's some people, some ghosts hanging around who are not your relatives. You don't know them, you never lived with them or had any real strong connection with them, but they're hanging around, so well, share the merit with them as well. And the Buddha said it's possible. If all your relatives have received the merit, well, maybe someone who's not a past relative can still receive merit. And there are people who do this. They go to graveyards and places where they do ceremonies to make merit for the dead, just in case people have died and been buried and no one made merit for them. Because unfortunately it does happen. People die without relatives to do a funeral for them in a state of suffering or other, and no one has remembered them, so they die a sad, lonely death. So sometimes we make merit for people who are total strangers, and it's still a good thing to do. And in the same way, we spread metta to other beings, and sometimes we're kind to the people we know. That tends to be the more normal thing because we know them, so there's a connection. So you spread metta and show your metta through body, speech, and mind to the people you know. But then sometimes there's people you have no connection with, strangers who you meet in some walk of life, some situation, and they're in a position of suffering. So you show your goodwill or your compassion, and that's a good thing to do as well. You know, as a monk, say, sometimes you visit the hospital and you're visiting a specific sick person because you know them, and you go and you give them some teaching and chant for them maybe, and then maybe someone in another bed that you don't know, they say, I want a blessing as well. Say, oh, okay, so you give them a blessing as well. And then maybe someone down the corridor says, oh, there's monks here, can I have a blessing? And it goes on like that. And you know, you don't know these people, but you still have metta for them, wish them well. Same with blessing cars. Like people are always bringing their cars here to get blessed. And you bless a car and you say, I hope you drive safely and you're protected as you drive your car, and you finish and you're just walking off and then says, someone else comes, I want my car blessed. You don't know them, but they want a car blessing anyway. Life is like that, isn't it? Sometimes you share metta with people you don't know, but you can still be kind to them, friendly. It's a form of good karma. It develops a good feeling in society. And you know, a pleasant place to live is a place where even strangers treat each other politely, friendly, treat each other well. And luckily that happens every day in the world. You know, all over the world people can treat each other very well, even though they don't know each other. So that's something to put effort into, trying not to be too cold with strangers and other beings. You know, of course we tend to be more friendly with our friends and relatives, but we can be friendly to others. And even the animal kingdom. I was talking to someone yesterday, like in our forest here, you know, we try to be friendly to all the animals, we spread metta to all the animals, but you know, some of the animals here are mass murderers. You know, we got snakes who eat frogs and mice, and we got birds who are always eating bugs, and we got foxes who can rip apart a baby wallaby or a baby kangaroo. So, you know, not all the creatures in the forest are cute and cuddly. Some of them are quite kind of vicious, but we still spread metta to them, not because we want them to kill everything, but because we still wish them well, and we wish them to be progressing in their spiritual practice. May they all be reborn as humans. So the more you practice, you tend to develop this sense of well-wishing for all beings in all realms, those you see, those you can't see, those near, those far. You know, the Buddha said you spread metta to those near, people in your family or your immediate circle of friends, colleagues, and then people are far, you know, people on the other side of the world who are maybe suffering. You don't know them, you can't see them, but you've heard about them, or you sense that there's someone suffering, so you can send your metta to them. And these are the qualities of metta, karuna. They're boundless, so that you know, there's no limit to them the more you develop them. And that even goes into other realms, ghost realms, deva realms, and so on. So who's tops at this? Well, the Buddha. You know, when the Buddha spreads metta, it's without limit, without bounds. It goes to every corner of the universe. You know, it's truly transcendent kind of compassion and kindness to all beings in all realms. And that's what's one of the most amazing qualities of a Buddha. You know, he's just complete metta, complete compassion without limits. So, another question from Felicia. Some Ajahns say that sexual fantasy is very heavy karma, but isn't karma made through bodily actions heavier than mental karma? Well, you would say sexual fantasy is coming from what we call gama raka, sensual desire based on your attachment to your body, the pleasure that's possible to have through a human body, and then directed out to other people as objects of your desire. So we have fantasies, imagination, we have very vivid imagination, and unfortunately nowadays, you know, social media, internet, advertising, movies, everything is encouraging this. So we got a lot of information, even without trying, you're absorbing a lot of information from the world around you that may encourage sensual desire, attachment to the physical form, attachment to sexual pleasure and sense pleasure in different forms. So it's part of life, it's something you have to deal with. But in terms of how heavy the karma is, well, it depends how much, how often, what it leads on to. Like you're saying, is it heavier, is mental karma or physical karma heavier? Well, generally physical karma is heavier, but actually the Buddha said the worst kind of karma is mental because it's wrong view. So maybe not recognizing the harm in attachment to sexual desire or attachment to thoughts of hatred, prejudice, not recognizing karma, what is good karma, bad karma, all the different kinds of wrong view, which there are many, the Buddha said is the worst kind of karma. So that's mental. And your state of mind, your attitudes, your views are the beginning of everything we do. When it comes to physical karma, of course, physically doing things tends to be heavier in terms of result. So, say a sexual fantasy can be just a fleeting moment of drifting off into a sexual fantasy. It could be a very intense kind of plan to do something to somebody, but it's still just mental, and it may arise, pass away, and you forget about it. It still has an effect on your mind, and it's conditioning your mind, but it's not yet strong necessarily. Whereas physical karma, doing something to someone may be based on that sexual fantasy. So nowadays there's a lot of talk in the news about sexual harassment, sex scandals, rape culture, all the different things that you read. That's the physical end of the spectrum where people probably have unfortunately stimulated themselves with looking at a lot of porn and a lot of sexual fantasies, then go and put it into action. And of course, one thing leads to another. So the more you fantasize sexually and the more you stimulate yourself, watching stuff, sharing stuff online with your friends and all that, well, the more likely you are to, one, speak about it for sure, and then two, do it. So generally these things go together, don't they? People watch a lot of porn, then they tend to have less restraint, less sense of shame and awareness of what is right or wrong, what is harmful, not harmful, and so maybe more likely to indulge in more gross or harmful physical behavior, sexual misconduct in all its different forms. One thing you have to remember is that you're harming yourself when you are blindly attaching to sexual desire, sexually fantasizing, and then particularly, say, watching porn or fantasizing about doing things to other people without their consent or in ways that you would be considered criminal or sexual misconduct. You're hurting yourself. So if you want to have a peaceful mind and a mind that's progressing as a human being, developing as a human being, it's something you've got to learn to deal with, which is one reason why people take on the precepts. So, you take on the 5 precepts, you're saying, you're committing to, say, a relationship maybe with one person, you're married or just have a partner, and you say, as long as I have this one person, I'm not going to continue relations with other people or seek other relations with other people. I'm going to treat my partner with respect. I'll do whatever they're happy with. It's a relationship based on consent, mutual respect, compassion. Or you may take on the 8 precepts and just abstain from all sexual activity so that you can focus your energy particularly on the development of meditation, as we are on this retreat. Simplify your mind, simplify your life. These are skillful ways of dealing with sexual desire, which of course we have from birth, because you're not born unless you have sexual desire, because it's come from last life. It's karma. Attachment to a human body brings with it sexual desire. The important thing is how you deal with it, and the precepts are giving you ways to deal with the worst excesses of it, so that you have harmless relations with others based on respect, or even practicing celibacy if you keep the 8 precepts. And of course, these are laying the foundation for deepening your practice of meditation, developing states of samadhi, where your mind goes completely beyond sensual desire, so that then you can contemplate to see the roots of sensual desire. Sexual desire are rooted in attachment to the body, but then seeing with clear insight that this human body is impermanent, not self, seeing the unattractive side of the body as well. And maybe in the future free yourself from sexual desire altogether, develop the path to the point where you're an anagami, and once a non-returner or arahant, completely beyond sexual desire. That's the goal. So the Buddha gave us many practices to deal with this, but number one would be the 5 precepts, to treat others with respect, to respect your partner, not to cheat on your partner, not to cheat with other people's partners and so on, and not to engage in kind of harmful sexual behavior. One thing people often seem to miss with this is like if you let your sexual desire go wild and you do have harmful sexual activity with other people, you don't only hurt yourself and hurt them, you often hurt lots of other people in your circle, like your family, your friends, your children, if you have any. Lots of people get affected. If you look at this in the world, there's so many people being hurt by unskillful sexual relations in this world. You could save so much suffering and trouble for so many people by just keeping the 5 precepts, say. Kids wouldn't have to be so hurt by their parents' activities. So many relationships wouldn't have to go off the rails. Workplace would become a better place, a peaceful, harmless place to be if everyone kept the 5 precepts. So this is really one of the Buddha's gifts to the world, is encouraging people to keep the 5 precepts so we can live together with a sense of respect and kindness and compassion, rather than always taking advantage of each other and exploiting each other. So it's a big topic, but generally bodily actions make the heaviest karma, but also you have to watch your views that lie behind your actions, because they're actually the real root cause of the trouble. Another question is, the 5th precept is to avoid harming others. So if I only drink a glass of sweet wine during a few evenings in a year when I'm alone and before I sleep, is that still bad karma? You have to answer that for yourself. If it's only a few evenings a year and you're on your own, it's not even a social thing, why do it at all? Just scrap it. You don't need to drink wine. You can drink something else. Drink grape juice. We went to Adelaide 2 weeks ago and they gave us fresh grape juice, which was non-alcoholic. It was very nice. And you don't get drunk and your mind is clear and you can meditate after it. So I would just recommend giving it up altogether. If you're only taking a little bit occasionally, just give it up altogether. The Buddha was, out of compassion, encouraging us to keep mindful and so to keep sober, not to get intoxicated, so that we can progress in our practice, so that we don't harm ourselves, harm others, physically, mentally, verbally. He's only encouraging us to do good things to help us improve our lives, be better human beings, more peaceful, wiser. So, it's a bit like the white lies. If you drink a few glasses, there's always a chance you'll drink a few more, and your mindfulness and intelligence starts to slip a bit, little by little. It can be very subtle. So the Buddha encouraged us just to scrap it altogether, and you can be very happy and find other things to drink. You can be happy in your life without it. So I'd give that some consideration. Next question. Dear Ajahn, my question is about judging others. Over the past few years, I've become aware of how I make mental judgments about people's actions and therefore their character, and have come to realize that it is not skillful or helpful. I've been working on noticing when I do this, by naming it and telling myself that it is not helpful to judge in this instance. I want to know what is a skillful way of addressing this trait and how can I reduce this tendency? It's from Uchita in Brisbane. Well, it sounds like you understand the problem and the solution here. You say you've been working on noticing when you do it. And that's the first thing. With all our mental habits and speech habits and actions, bring up more mindfulness. Become mindful of your intentions, your mental state. Become mindful of the choices, choices and decisions you make, the actions you take, what you say, what you do. That's the starting point. Become more aware, and then try, as you're becoming aware, to recognize what you're doing. Where is it coming from? Is it coming from wisdom, or is it coming from delusion, attachment, some form of greed or negativity? To become more aware of what's going on, what is leading to what. And, wisdom in Buddhism is always that knowledge and understanding that helps reduce suffering. So if you find you've got a habit where you're judging others and thinking maybe negatively about them, finding fault with others all the time, the more mindful you become, the more you meditate, the more you reflect on your behavior, you'll probably agree after a while you're not happy when you do this. It's making your mind more obsessed with others, more negative in its outlook, less happy. So perhaps, like you're saying, you're working on this, so you understand this problem. Well, every time you catch yourself falling into that way of thinking, looking at someone, thinking about them, judging them, they're good, they're bad, I like them, I don't, they got this characteristic, that characteristic. When you notice that, one way you can deal with it is you stop and say, okay, that's them, I'll leave that. What about me? Do I have those characteristics? Do I have those faults? Do I act in that way? Am I anything like that? Can I find those things in myself? So you turn it around. And if you do that every time, after a while you get used to just looking at yourself more. You still notice other people, but you're not spending much time thinking about them. You're aware of them, you know them, but then you let them go and you're looking more at yourself. Because you have to remember, you can't change the behavior and the way other people are very much. Maybe if it's someone very close to you, like your child or your best friend, maybe you can influence them a bit. Who can you influence most is yourself. So divert that energy that would normally be going out looking at other people, judging them, comparing them and so on. Divert it back to yourself where you can really improve things. And we all want to improve the world. Where you can improve the world is through improving yourself. And often you find as you put more effort into that, then the people around you may subtly, or indirectly also, it may help them as well. If you spend all your time thinking about others, judging them, comparing them, there's very little you can do to help them or improve them or change the situation. And you're filling your own mind up with more negative thoughts. You tend to become more unhappy for that. So try and turn this habit around. Look at yourself more than others. Next question from the same person. It's about service to others. Can you please give some advice on how to provide care or service to an elderly relative who is not always appreciative of it? For example, a person who laments about not being able to go out and enjoy nature because they are in a wheelchair, but they reject offers to take them out. Or who laments about being lonely because no one talks to them, but it's very difficult to engage in conversation because they're so bitter and sarcastic. What can one do when one has tried to be empathetic and compassionate about their situation and history, but feels they need to try and alleviate some of the person's suffering? Does one just leave it or persist? Thank you. I remember many, many years ago, the most senior monk in the hierarchy of the Sangha, the monks in Thailand, Somdet Nyana Sangwon, gave a Dhamma talk. And he was talking about old age and sickness because he was getting older and sicker. And he started the talk emphasizing the point that He said, if there's one goal or one aim in life you should develop, and that is the goal or the aim to be an old person who is not grumpy, doesn't complain, and is very easy to look after. So he, in his wisdom, and he was a very wise man, he obviously thought that was an important thing, an important lesson for humans to learn. Because it is very common, isn't it? As we get older, our body gets weaker, our memory goes a bit, we can't do what we used to be able to do, we don't look so good, we don't feel so good. We tend to react negatively to that. We get grumpy, disappointed, frustrated, and what's more, we often take it out on the people around us. So like you say, it's understandable and it is very common, but why don't we, who are on this retreat, still active, still practicing, we see the problem, why don't we make our goal, I'm not going to become somebody who's old, grumpy, complaining, giving everyone trouble. Make your determination to be a person who's easy to look after till the end of your life. And who does that best? From my experience, Sangha, monks, nuns I've seen have become very easy to look after in their old age because they practice. They practice the Dhamma, dana, precepts, bhavana, mindfulness, wisdom. They understand that, taking your suffering out on others is not a good way to go. It just makes everything worse. Learning to be content, learning to accept the aging process, the deterioration of the body as just the way things are, rather than resisting it and always complaining about it, getting upset, getting bitter and taking out on others. Sangha seem to do this very well. So many inspiring monks and nuns over the years who have dealt with old age well, dealt with sickness well. So I'd look for your examples there. Go and visit some old monks or sick monks or nuns and learn how to do it. And learn while you're young, so that as you get older, you can employ what you've learned, you can put it into practice. Of course, if you already have say it's a parent or grandparent who's in that situation, well, yes, we just try and do the best we can. When you're dealing with them and they're suffering, they're complaining, they're bitter, they're resentful, they don't make it easy, stop and just consider what's going on. And compassion means you're understanding their suffering because of their situation, but it's not your suffering. And even though it takes a bit of patience and effort to deal with them, keep that in mind. These moods, these words they're saying, the moods, the suffering they're showing, it's not your suffering, it's theirs. So just keep meeting with patience, mindfulness, and reminding yourself, well, this is not my suffering, this is the suffering of this old person, and you're giving them every love and care you can, but you don't have to take it into your heart and go away and keep regurgitating it and reliving it and rethinking it over and over again. It's just ordinary. When you get old, then the body is weaker, and if somebody, unfortunately, they're not so mindful, their memory's not so good, their faculty's not so sharp, well, sometimes they become more angry, more bitter. Their words sometimes can sound very nasty. Try to separate your mind and yourself from that, so that you can still engage with them and they're saying what they say, but you're not attaching to it or taking it personally. You're not making it a personal problem. It's just, this is old age, this person is like this. You're showing your kindness, which is what they need, but you're not taking it into your heart, remembering it, feeling hurt, getting upset by it. That's what you have to learn. And then also reflect, when I get older, I'm not going to do this. When I get older, I'm going to practice a lot of kindness, forgiveness, contentment. So like as humans, we love to be independent, go here, go there, do what we want. And when we get older, you can't do that so well. So then we get upset, but then we get upset when people try to look after us. Sometimes people don't accept help from others very well. So that's something you have to learn. It's part of letting go. If you've reached the point where you are wheelchair bound, you need someone to help feed you, dress you, take you to the toilet, get you up, put you to bed, if that's the state of your body, you may have to accept that. You might as well accept it gracefully because it's the way things are, rather than fighting it and taking it out on the people around you. I know this is easier said than done, but I'm just giving the general guide of, and guideline of what we're looking for in our practice. Sometimes we have to learn to accept help when we're sick, when we're elderly. There's nothing wrong with that. Look at it in this light. If someone is helping you, they're making good karma. Be happy for them. Whether they're paid as a carer or they're your family member, they're making good karma. This is something good for them. It's helping you. And you just have to accept, if your body is not working very well, you might need extra help. You need these things. Just accept it. Keep your mind in a wholesome, happy state. When you do have people who understand this, then they're very pleasant, aren't they? It's very nice to visit an elderly person or a sick person who's content, at peace, accepting their illness, accepting their aging. They're a great blessing to the world. People go and, oh, it's such a blessing, and you can talk to them and you gain something from the experience. Maybe you learn something from that experience. So we can all aspire to be that person, the one who's a blessing to the rest of the world in our old age. Yeah. Another question from the same person. When meditating, if a very intense feeling of sadness comes up related to a problem that is ongoing, what is the best way to deal with it? Is it worth sitting with the feeling and processing what is going on, or is it better to turn the mind away from the feeling and bring it back to the meditation object? Is it beneficial in a Dhamma sense to process or delve into the reason for the sadness in order to understand and move forward? Or is that just adding to the thinking habit which we are trying to eradicate? Well, number one, establish sati. So if you're practicing anapanasati, that's the way you develop your mindfulness in the beginning, is mindfulness of the breath or any other meditation object. That's your kind of default practice. Then you have feelings arise. Some of them are physical, pain in the body, sensations. Some are mental, and it could be sadness. If you're truly mindful and you're establishing mindfulness and putting effort into that, well, then you may be able to just be aware of that feeling as a feeling. So maybe you're feeling sad. Maybe an obvious reason for that, someone has passed away, something unfortunate has happened. You don't need to delve into it a lot. It's more just being aware of that feeling as a feeling and observing it arising and ultimately passing away. Because even feelings of sadness are not in your experience all day, all night, are they? They come and go. So observing that fact that this feeling has come up, it's there, but as you're mindfully observing, the more mindful you are, the sharper, the more consistent your mindfulness is, you might find the quicker that feeling passes. And you're gaining understanding there. Oh, it's a feeling, it's true, but it's impermanent. What's impermanent is not a self. It's a passing experience that arises, passes away. And that's giving you a key to help let go of it. You're reducing its power over the mind. You're reducing the tendency for it to come up again. You're weakening it or undermining that feeling. Still may come up, maybe for many occasions, but you're learning to treat it with right view. Once you establish mindfulness, you can be aware of it as impermanent, not self. Having said that, sometimes there are things we have to learn and then apply to the rest of our life that we learn in meditation. So maybe there is some sad situation or a situation prompting sadness, that something needs to be addressed in your life. It just depends what it is, but there may be something you have to do as well. But I would think about that or focus on that later. During your meditation, I'd just work on establishing mindfulness and seeing feelings as impermanent, arising, passing away. Don't analyze too much, because you tend to get caught up in the thinking, and often that's not the most useful thing to do. Better to establish a more detached awareness, so you're with the feeling, but you're observing it and then letting it go. And then, as I said, at other times, maybe contemplate if there's something you need to adjust in your life. Well, okay, do that at another time. Last question from Ying Chen in Singapore. Venerable Ajahn, thanks for allowing us to ask questions. I have a question about right view. I have a disease and the doctor suggested that I go for surgery. I believe that my health condition does not require surgery, just having a healthy diet, exercise and meditation. Don't panic and don't worry. Is that the right view? I don't know what your condition is, how serious it is. You might first of all ask yourself, well, why did you go to the doctor? If you're not going to follow the doctor's advice, why did you go? Sure, sometimes we don't follow the doctor's advice, but going to the doctor indicates you maybe have that interest to get some medical help, and maybe the doctor knows more about the body than you do. Maybe he's got something or she's got something good to say, so I wouldn't just dismiss what they've said. But I don't know what you've got, what your situation is, so occasionally there are those conditions that even something that requires surgery we can ride out, be patient with. Eat healthy, of course, always eat healthy. Exercise, of course, always get exercise whether you've got a condition or not. Meditate, of course, always meditate anyway. There are those rare people who've made a lot of merit who seem to be able to cope with illnesses and injuries, even the stuff that requires surgery, and seem to get through it without the surgery. That does happen, so I'm not dismissing that. But you also have to be a little bit cautious and say, well, if the doctor's suggesting surgery, what are the benefits of that? Consider both sides of the story. If I have surgery, what will happen? What are the benefits? If I don't have it, what are the benefits? So, as I said, I don't know what your condition is. I can't give you a specific advice. You might have to go with your heart. But, observe things from day to day. Over time, if things are getting worse, well, maybe you need to go back to the doctor and get some fresh advice and maybe take that advice. If things are getting better, maybe that's a sign that you can cope with it without surgery. But some, even enlightened monks I know of, have had surgery and medical procedures when it seemed appropriate. So it's not like one should just rule it out as never. Sometimes you hear people say, oh, if you have surgery, that must be just an attachment to your body, and I'm just going to let go and let things take their course. Well, sometimes you can do that if you're ready and your mind is developed enough. You can do that sometimes. But also you have to see your body as a bit like a vehicle. You want to be able to practice the Dhamma for as long as possible while you're alive. And a healthy, strong body is your vehicle that will help you to do that. Inevitably, we get older, we do get sick, one day we've got to die. But while you can keep it going, if there's something you can do, a procedure, a treatment, that will keep your vehicle, the body, going longer and better, well, maybe consider it. If you meet the right doctor, get the right treatment, maybe that's your good karma, your merit, and maybe it will help you so you can keep practicing more conveniently for the long term. We can't be too idealistic and say, oh, attachment to the body, I'm not going to do anything, I just let whatever's going to happen, let it be. That could be a risky approach if it means maybe a shortening of your life or a lot of inconvenience, or you become an invalid, because you're going to be able to practice less then. It's not so convenient when you're sick to practice or injured to practice. So it's just like a car, isn't it? If you've got a car, you might as well keep it well maintained so that you can use it and drive here and there. You could say, oh, having a car is an attachment, so I'm not going to fix it, I'm not going to go to the mechanic, so after a while it just stops working and it's no use to you. If you've got it, try and keep it going. That will probably be the best outcome, so that you've got the convenience of that car. In the same way, if you can keep your body going, strong, healthy, whatever helps to do that, well, try it out, maybe. So it's your decision. I'm not exactly sure what your situation is, so I can't give a specific answer here. But try and see your body as something that can help you in the practice. So try and look after it the best you can. So that's the end of the Q&A session for this period.